welcome back to Deano's Garage. So as I explained, what I'm going to be doing today is painting this fairing, the deep scratches within it. If you just have a look at how bad this fairing is, you just have a look in there, you've got some deep scratches, and then also areas here. These are obviously going to need to be rubbed down. This is a big area of concern, but these are the ones we're going to concentrate on now just for the sake of this experiment. Right, so here we are. This is the base coat. So I'm going to just dab this base coat into this scratch like this, and you might be thinking, my God, what is he doing? That is so messy. Hopefully I'm going to demonstrate to you why it doesn't matter that it's very messy. Where we got the black here, that's right down into the plastic. Now I obviously have to be fairly quick because I'm going to show you the use of the blade. So that's really right down into the deep scratches. But there's a bit of black there. So anywhere where there's black, I need to lay down that silver paint really. Right, so this is the part which I've never done before, and hopefully this is the bit that works for us. So I ought to maybe let this dry a little bit, but I'm experimenting here. So I'm going to drag this over the top, like so. Take that cloth, take that silver paint off, that's the excess paint. And again, being very careful not to dig this in. So you can begin to see now that what's actually happened here is any silver paint that's left is now within the scratch. So this is actually working how I hoped it would. Any excess here, by the way, I can just cut that off. I'm just going to run this over again just to make sure I've picked up enough of the paint. So now if you look at this, if you come around and have a look here, the silver paint that's here is deep within that scratch. Anything else will just cut off the surface. I'm not worried about that, and as you can see, that's the excess that's come off. So I'm going to allow this to dry, and then I'm going to go over with the top coat of the Blaze Orange and do exactly the same thing. And then the Blaze, as this dries, by the way, this will shrink into that scratch. So it will allow me to put some Blaze Orange over the top as well, and then hopefully when I drag across, all we're going to see is the orange and not the silver. Again, this is part of the experiment, but I'm pretty happy that that silver is all that's remaining in them scratches. And as you can imagine, if it was just orange and I just did the orange, you'd almost lose them scratches within reason. But I'm trying to do this properly, and part of the demonstration to you is to try and do it as well as I can. If we look here, we've got some gouges in here in black, which are going to be a lot harder because we've got an edge, and I need to drag that across them scratches there and try and keep the silver in there. I'm now going to do that, and hopefully I can drag the silver off the surface enough to leave the silver in them scratches. I won't film that, I'll just do that, and then I'll show you after what that was like. So yeah, let this dry, and then we'll put the orange on in a little bit. So we've put the silver into the scratches. I have this, what was my daughter's hairdryer, still is technically, but she doesn't really know, we won't go into that. So I use this quite a lot in the garage actually. It's got two settings, one very hot and one less hot, less strength to it. So I'm going to use this to artificially dry the silver paint that's in them scratches, so I can then go over with the orange Blaze and do exactly what we did before, and hopefully this experiment will come out and we'll get the result that we want. So yeah, I'm just going to dry this now, or not. So just gently run over the paint. on a low setting, and this will just dry that paint very quickly. It's only a thin layer of paint anyway in there, so it's not like we have to wait hours for it to dry. And now I'm going to put the orange on, and I'll show you what that's like when I get on with that. Right, so here we go with this is the Honda Candy Blaze Orange top coat for the CBR 600 F3. And again, as I said, I'm using a brand new clean blade. Just dab it on. Don't run it in like painting something. What you need to do is apply this paint to the scratches. Don't run it through. If you run it through, what you'll actually do is you'll actually drag the silver paint that's already in there out, because one sort of solvent based paint will drag out the other. So you want to dab this on the surface, just like you see me doing now. Dab it on the surface in little, almost little dots, like dot to dotting. And if you weren't using obviously the razor blade technique, you might think that looks horrendous. You could, if you weren't using the razor blade technique, let this dry over a period of time and actually come back with wet and dry sandpaper and try and sand down these blobs so they smooth out, which would normally be the technique that someone would use when dealing with scratches like this. Actually, we have got these bits here. I've already put the silver paint into this, so I'm just again coming in with the orange into there and there. Dab it on. Right, so here we go again with the technique of razor blade, and this is where it's either going to work or not. Just grab my cloth, and again, same technique as before. Don't dig your blade in, but drag it through, and we can see what's happened there. Actually, the silver paint has worked a treat, because it's actually filled the gap quite well. So the orange hasn't remained in there. I'm just going to try and reapply that orange like you would with filler, and that's almost working better. You can just see that going in. So the problem I've almost got is the silver paint actually worked really well, went into that scratch, and now the orange paint isn't able to sit on top of it. Right, so I've done one coat of silver and then one coat of the Candy Blaze Orange. Now, Candy, not to tell people how to suck eggs as I sometimes do, but not everyone knows this, of course. Candy basically means that this is almost like a clear coat with colour, so you're seeing the silver underneath, and this is basically, as you can see, almost like a lacquer with sort of orange in it. So I'm going to put this over again. So this is the second coat of orange, because it wasn't really what I would say was successful the first time. You could see too much of the scratches underneath, but I'm hoping by doing a second coat that I will leave more orange over the top. And I guess because this is a candy coat, it's inevitable that I'm going to see some of that scratch underneath, because you are picking up light underneath the surface of the candy paint. So this is, I mean, this is probably the trickiest, hardest type of paint to be trying this technique with, because, like I say, because it's a candy coat, you are inevitably going to see scratches underneath. I can see when I've laid this paint on top, I can see black underneath it, which is because light is bouncing through the candy coat into the dark black scratches underneath. So I guess the silver needs to do its job, and then the candy is giving it its colour. But if I'm not putting enough candy on there, or, as we're about to see, if I drag too much of the candy off, again this is a brand new clean blade, if I drag too much candy off, then again we lose enough candy to cover that surface. And yeah, it's pretty much doing the same as it did before. You can see it's dragged the paint off there, but it's not laying enough paint into that. So I'm just gonna almost filling that back up. So I'm not even gonna mess with trying to take that off of there. So I think because this is candy paint, I'm just going to almost try and fill that crack with this paint. Because this is candy paint, I don't think this is going to work on this type of damage using this technique. With this candy paint, I think I would be left really to do those dabs, very fine dabs, let it dry for probably about a week would be good, and then wet and dry, starting with a 250 grade, and then just trying to wet and dry that down to a point where you were happy with it, that it was covering the surface. But if you come around and have a look at that, once I clear this paint off, and I'm just going to clear off this excess actually, because you can see this is a build up of excess paint. If I don't get that paint now, that's going to be very difficult to get later on. And even there's kind of a build up of it. You can just see it dragging through there. That will sand off and tea-cut off quite easily everything that's around these scratches. You might think, my God, that looks horrendous. That will come off quite easily, and it will leave what's in the scratches because it's obviously inside that sort of valley, if you like. But I think that's as good as it's going to get, because it's candy. It's showing through the black of the damage. So with this kind of paint, unfortunately, this technique I don't think's ever really going to work. But it was worth experimenting with, because I think you get to see how, when we had those deep scratches, using a blade, you can just take the excess off and leave the paint. The silver actually worked really well. If this was silver, I think they almost would have disappeared. But with the candy, it doesn't really work. Thanks for watching Deano's Garage. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll be showing you these videos, updating some of these videos, and of course I'll be adding to some of these along the way.